Hello. Welcome to episode 3 of the End of the Beginning podcast. In this episode, we discuss personal growth versus material attainment, finding a beautiful place inside yourself, and life as a video game with the cheat codes on. We chat about the dance between honoring your higher self and your humanity, and contemplate, do we actually need suffering? We hope you enjoy what you hear. And if you'd like to submit any questions for upcoming episodes, please contact us at theendofthebeginningpodcast@gmail.com. Alternatively, you can find us on YouTube and Instagram. Thanks for listening. I have friends who take the piss out of personal growth.
Yeah,
Which I think's really funny because they're probably the people who need it the most.
I bet. I don't. Yeah, it's who doesn't need it? Like, what are we even talking about?
What are you doing?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure what other show is in town.
Well, I think there's still many people on that roundabout of get stuff. I've got a nice house.
Yeah,
And I need a big boat is the next thing. Or I've got a, trip to the Maldives. Or, is that how you pronounce it?
yeah. I don't know if it's Dives or Deves. Maldives.
I think by saying both sounds like we know what we're talking about.
Covered it. Yeah, we're conducting
aware
a
of
higher
everybody's, yeah.
order of conversation.
There's some people who really are in their matter. They're really in this body and they're really in this existence. And then there's others who are half here. And then, when I moved to the Byron Shire, I remember people telling me about...
we can now be geolocated.
Okay, when I moved up here, I remember...
Down, depending on perspective. Please, continue.
I remember someone telling me about all the hippies and all that sort of stuff.
Mm.
And I remember going to the markets, farmer's market, and maybe it was just the density of coming out of a city where I was living. But a guy came up to me and he was doing a fundraiser, and it wasn't any kind of, but I could feel this like this kind of like rising airiness in him, and I was like, "What the hell is that?"
Huh.
It was so unfamiliar to me. And he was just super ethereal, I guess, is how I would understand that now.
Ethereal or ethereal?
Yeah.
Maldives?
Yeah. There's something for everyone.
Say more about what you experienced in his presence. That's curious.
I felt a rising out of myself a little bit.
Huh.
And it felt like he was half here and half there.
Yeah.
And was just kind of in this, it felt like he was in limbo.
Did it feel magnetic or did it feel repellent?
To me, because it was unusual, I guess the first thing was like, what the fuck is going on here?
Well, especially if he's asking you for money.
Yeah.
It's this strange man who wants me to leave my body, but to give him my wallet as I do.
Yeah. I remember going into the local herbal shop and I was like, hey, I've just moved to the area and I've got this kind of feeling like I'm kind of half outside of mine. They're like, oh yeah, we know what to give you. They're like, oh yeah, people come in all the time. Take this.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I took
it's the Kool-Aid antidote shop.
I remember the first time I took it and I was on a long distance drive, which for me is an hour because my brain falls asleep after about half an hour. And I remember I was driving over a bridge and my whole isness just went into my body as these herbs kind of like anchored me into myself. It was super weird. It was just as weird as that guy. It was almost the opposite effect of like anchoring really heavy into your matter, into your meat puppet.
And the story unfolds as if that they gave you an antidote to that guy.
Yeah.
I've encountered some sort of spectre. Yeah. And it's lingering. You got any...
Harry Potter vibes.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, if the audience and I can confer... Mm-hmm. Then it'd be like, what do we notice in the storytelling? It's like, well, Paul's sensitivity is pretty high. Gotta be.
I think the area we're in is notorious for, pulling sensitivity out of, or sensitizing people. It's a sensitive area, I guess. Amplifying
sensitivity.
Yeah. And I think just, the density of cities where it's like, I'm doing my job and I'm buying stuff. Which is that's the other way there is, which is where we started, I guess, is you know, some people are way more into personal growth and expansion of self than other people,
Yeah.
which is totally cool. But there's only one real game in town, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, yeah. And what's that?
Yeah, expansion.
Yeah.
Yeah, like living into what you're, where are the edges of your full potential?
Cool.
Don't you think?
Yeah, of course. I just, it's cool listening to you language it. Yeah. So I guess we start, that's the capturing of personal growth versus attainment, maybe. I mean, material attainment, which is
Yeah.
interesting because in the spiritual vernacular, it's, well, traditionally anyway, it's like attainment of spiritual growth. So
A thing you get.
certain cultures, it's like, oh, that person does have a lot of attainment. And the truth is I don't think I've ever heard that said without purity and reverence. That person has a lot of attainment. So it's like they were either born that way and they did some work, or they were born dense with more relative density and that they did a heap of work and got to some point, and then they've got a lot of attainment. And I think what they mean in that moment is that when I'm around them, they impress me. I feel calm, but at other times rattled, maybe. I feel held. I feel like they've worked something out.
That's a biggie, isn't
most
it?
spiritual, methods or spheres. Like I think of the sort of Abraham Hicks more New Age realm, in a subtler way in the shamanic space, plant medicine orientation, let's say, and then in the traditional Buddhism, Hinduism, Sufism type paths, that there's a sense that that's a different kind of creature doing a different kind of thing. They joke about it in the Abraham Hicks movement, like, why does everything work out for you all the time? What are you doing? What's going on? And coming back to, we were talking about grounding some of these loftier dialogues in, how do we apply that? And that's the challenge always. And my natural instinct is to say, you don't apply it, you be it.
Oh, right.
And how
I
incredibly
thought that was your
frustrating.
answer. You don't.
Oh, you mean in the arrogant sense?
Not at all.
So that, how do you become it? And in some ways the answer is like, well, you take the part of you that's already like that and you dwell there more often.
Beautiful.
Yeah, but what does that mean?
Well, talk about it.
Well, you talk about it.
But that's such a
Well,
that's such a beautiful thing to say, though,
right?
because that's a really fundamental concept that anyone can get.
Practical method.
Like for me, and this again probably sounds really dumb because it's really simple, but the realization, and I had this realization, I don't know, only probably 3 or 4 years ago, the realization that, oh God, what language do you use? The realization that the amount of God that you want to have in your life is literally the amount of love that you can suck into your being and exist and express outwardly into this dimension. Like, it's so simple.
Yeah.
And that speaks to what you just said. It's like, take the most beautiful parts of yourself and dwell in those spaces. Like, yours sounds way more poetic, but...
I don't think you're listening to yourself, bro.
But I think that those really simple, in my experience, the simple things that have real power, that go in, seem to be the ones that stick and have the most juice in them.
Yeah.
Because they're simple.
Yeah. See, I think that's somebody playing with the frontier of their growth, looking out into the frontier of their growth is fine. And feeling something resonant with their frontier, the edge of where they're headed, and then they hear something said, whether it be in their own head or out in the world from the mouth of another, let's say, and they hear it and it's really resonant with where they're already interested. And I don't mean intellectually interested, I mean like their soul is playing around in a boundary, an outer limit, and then they feel something that's really resonant with that, and it goes, wow, that's the truth of who I am right now.
Yeah.
And it expands.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about what's the method or whatever, part of the limitation and the my struggle with that or my resistance against that is that process does not stop. So that frontier continues to receive inspiration, eat it, embody it, coming back to like how much love can I fit in the cells of my body and emanate out of me and really to be that love. And then same cut, copy, expand, double, and now I'm being even more love. And that rinse, repeat, like that just doesn't stop. So what's the method? Well, it depends on what work you're up to. So last week when we were talking about what would you say to somebody who said, this is overwhelming, or that idea fatigues me, or whatever. And I said something like, you're doing it wrong, which is a prickly wording in isolation. Not regrettable though, because there's a follow-up to it, which is like, there is a more loving way to do the same thing. And so how do we find the most loving way to move through the stuff that we're moving through? And actually the fact that it's painful if we step to the left, and that pushes us into stepping to the right, is kind of this dialogue with our higher self. So one idea that might be fun to play with here is that you only experience pain, let's say emotional pain, because you're out of alignment with self, meaning that the belief you're holding through that thought, the trajectory of that thought, let's say, is the opposite of where your higher self is moving, is the opposite of where your soul, the God part, the source part is dwelling. So it feels shitty to go, I suck at this. Whether you're 6 or you're 66, that feels shitty. Actually, there might be exceptions where you're like, I suck at this. And it's so good to suck at something at 66 because I get to start again and I get all the newness. I suck at Sudoku.
I do suck at Sudoku.
Oh, I'm so sorry. To hit a vein, hit a nerve, I mean. I do suck at Sudoku.
You're right.
I feel so seen.
Can we turn this off?
Yeah, anyway, side note. So the premise being that things are quite simple. You feel good when you adopt the perspective of your soul, of source. You feel bad when you don't. And that's infuriatingly simple to me when I'm in certain modes, like contracted, feeling shitty, whatever. But I think it's also true.
It feels like for a lot of people that's an easy thing to do. Like it's an easy first step because it's always about, at least in my experience, it's always been about where's the needle playing on your record. Like, because you've worn this is my analogy that seems to work for my brain, is like the things that are rolling around inside your head are like a record, and your life is the needle, and you're just in that groove, man.
Yeah,
like,
I like that.
However, sounds so 70s, man. However long you've believed that story about yourself, that's how deep the groove is on that record.
Right.
And so every time you want to change something, you have to lift the needle and pop it into a new groove, and that groove's going to be light on at the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's going to be shallow, and over time that needle's going to slip back into that deeper groove, and you just keep moving the needle, and then you move it again and it slips back, and you move it again, but now it stays there for a little bit.
Groove.
And over time that becomes the deeper groove than what you were at, and the old groove might have been I'm a piece of shit, and the new groove is I'm getting better every day, or whatever your thing is. So the idea that find a beautiful place inside yourself and dwell there. Like for you, practically, what does that mean? Does that mean like treating yourself nicely, like internally dialogue? Does it mean like, I just heard this new thing about dating yourself.
Okay.
Which is like take your 5 love languages, and are you doing that to yourself?
Yeah.
You know, if you like acts of service, are you doing that for yourself?
Yeah.
If you like kind words of kindness, affirmation. Yeah, like are you speaking words of affirmation to yourself? So, like, how does that work in your life?
Yeah,
like I know how it works in mine.
Oh God, the first example that comes to my head is around affirmation. The affirmation is, I think for most heterosexual men anyway, it's the most common love language. That and physical touch usually in one of those orders. And interlacing that with I guess traditional Hindu understanding is that men access their heart through their sex. So the deep desire for all beings to access their heart and feel safe and feel seen and feel valued actually does come through their sex.
Like sexual intercourse, you mean?
Yeah, like if you're in an established relationship, let's say, and the dilemma is that women access their sex through their heart, so they want to feel seen, safe, held.
What would men...
in order to feel connected enough to open that part of their energetic body, with obviously the bodily function, the bodily sex organs secondary to that, and the masculine being flipped, so that you access the heart via the sex. So that creates instant polarity because they're the opposite, and typically we're lit up by our opposite for reasons we can get into. So we're drawn to that which is opposite, and then you've got the dilemma of how do both needs get met at the same time. But you could argue that draws us up and out of, let's say, psychological phenomenon. Like I'm going to consider this other human being, and the inverse being like I'm going to consider self because I have an issue with over consideration of another being. So like codependent versus perhaps a bit narcissistic in that balance or something. How do I get onto all that?
It's a beautiful place.
Yeah. So
looking after yourself.
So we started with love language, didn't we? So men, coming right back to it, often feel that would be the touch. What's it called?
Physical
touch.
Yeah.
As a love language form is overrepresented in straight men. I don't know about the LGBTQ component of that. And obviously there's exception in all of this, but we're speaking in generalities. And women's can be much more often quality time, which is often about containment. So I'm going to create a safe space for you to be fully yourself. I'm going to create a safe space for you to say anything, because that's how you connect with your heart, your emotional self, the stream of reality, the stream of you that exists on an emotional level can be held like it's water. And another archetype is that women are water, men are fire. I think it's fire. Shit, I might have to edit that bit.
Sounds good.
Falls off a cliff. But yeah, so if women are water, hence the concept of containment. So water, I think we talked about in a different setting last week, the week before. Water's magnificent, held. Even the oceans themselves are held by the land, and they're held by the moon, and they're held by the earth. They're not just floating around in a nebulous way, I suppose. They do have boundaries. So a fish tank looks amazing. You hold it out in front of you, and it has walls. And yeah, those walls are best served as transparent glass. But if you remove the walls, the water disappears essentially.
I remember this.
Yeah, so it runs.
Dead fish
everywhere. Yeah, that's right. So it runs so thin all over the ground that it doesn't exist. So when an energy, let's say, when a being is coming from a feminine disposition in a given moment, and it is fluid. Excuse I don't know if that's pun, but it's like I'm using fluid in a few ways there. It's variable. When a woman is coming from that place, and a man can come from that place too. They desire to be held by self in the first instance. But when we're in the deep machinations of a spousal human relationship, real vulnerability, and I care so much about this other person that I'm really exposed, and it's causing me to grow at such a rapid rate that growth could use some steadying. That's an interesting thing actually, is something tweaked in me a while back about holding love languages as it's sort of like the transaction, if you like. I'll do what I can to meet your love languages. You'll do what you can to meet mine in this fantasy spousal relationship. And why would we do that? It's because the primary purpose of deep relationship is for both to grow. Growth is having deeper and deeper access to yourself. Coming back to your eloquent metaphor, that I can stretch the vessel to accommodate more love, more God, so that I can be more love and have the experience of living as that in real time. which is as good as it gets. And it's also the only thing that's ever going on in different rates and inflections. Yeah, so if that's what relationship is for, then love languages as a version of it, the way that we love each other in a transactional kind of back and forth kind of way. Transactions can be really triggering to play with because it feels so disconnected from the heart. And it's yet you and I as friends, if one of us removes integrity and the other one's still giving it, let's say, whatever we co-decide, agree, that's what co-decide means, agree, that that integrity looks like, if one of us removes it, then the relationship breaks and becomes something else. So you can't avoid, while we're in this, dualistic plane we call Earth, human existence, you can't avoid some transaction. And so
just the nature of
we
it.
want to, it's happening in pop psychology a little bit, in the spiritual realms, we're reclaiming the transactional nature of things. If things are only transactional and there's no deeper connection to being felt between two people, then it's incredibly dry. And not for some. Just as simply, it's death. You wouldn't bother with a relationship like that. But you got to have some where we're not just two souls that are infinitely resourced. It's like, no, I need holding. I need the grounding of being held sometimes, or the sort of spiritual access that sex provides, like through the body, so that it's integrated and embodied. So tying this all together, if relationships are really about spiritual growth and the transactionality of meeting each other's love languages, which are usually quite specific to the person, like they're different, and we attract people with the opposite kinds of love languages. So you've really got to learn a different language as if it were learning Cantonese. How is it that somebody who functions from words of affirmation, they draw all their resourcing from that, or much of their resourcing from that? How do I do that when I don't speak that language at all? But when somebody recognizes that that's difficult for you and you're trying and you show up, so it's like if you're actually in China and you attempt Mandarin or Cantonese, they're like so
Cut
thrilled.
you some slack.
Well, wonderful! This is so hard for you. I'm so touched by that. It's a bit like that. So I'm trying to land this plane here. The growth, if the relationship's really potent and the love's really deep and the intentionality is exquisitely shared and resonant, that this is about deep growth, this is what we're doing, then the love languages, then you're moving really quickly through the stratosphere. It's a rocket ship instead of a car or a bike. Then you get speed wobbles. And what can lubricate, I was going to say lubricate the cogs, but what can stabilize those speed wobbles is the grounding of love language exchange. So that's like the purposefulness, the methodicalness of loving someone well, seeing them in the middle of their stuff and vice versa occurring at the same time at its best. Yeah. That makes sense. So like the growth for growth's sake, it's a bit like if it's only about growth and not about the maintenance of the relationship, then it can be a form of spiritual bypass where it's just always going to launch and love and pretend that we don't have limitations, behave like we don't need oxygen, touch, water, shelter, sustenance, So having both online, being fully online humanistically and fully online spiritually, that's the intertwining of things.
If someone's not in a relationship though, and they're like listening to this and they're loving, they're loving what they're hearing, like where is that? Where's the substitute? Where's the...
Right.
You know what I mean?
I do. And it's...
Like it's in friends and it's in all that beautiful quality time and stuff. But unless you have a friend that's able to deep dive with you, then how do you find that space?
Well, it comes back to a little bit what we were saying last week is the primary romance is with self.
Yeah.
And that's the only way relationships really work anyway, is that the proposition of a relationship is to enable me to deepen my relationship with self. That's what growth is. When you say I'm going to let source in and let it expand me and then normalize this new version of myself. And functionally, that is what joy is in the deeper places. Therefore, that's happening the primary version of that is happening between self and self.
Yeah.
Which sounds like an oxymoron. That means you've got a part that sees and a part that feels. conveniently in the, shavism world that I come from originally, there's a container and there's an object that goes inside the container. There's a eye.
Inside yourself?
Yeah.
Mm.
So inside yourself, there is a part that sees and a part that bees,
Mm-hmm.
or a part that feels, we could say. And so the life form is moving, taking the form of, let's say, a feeling, the stuff of life that you're moving through. And it also lends itself to like your actual personality, like the pole of it all, to me, is the Shakti part, the feminine part. That's the life. If you take that away, you've just got God. You've just got infinity. So you're actually, in the Shaivite world, you're contracting God into a personhood, into an individuation that can now actually roam around and experience itself. That would be the feminine part, and then there's a part that sees it over the top. And all of us have this longing to be seen.
Is that the, like, when you say seen, like you're talking about internal feminine, masculine dynamics. From your understanding, is the masculine literally just the container that's holding the feminine dances around, but the actual acknowledgement or the presence of that witnessing is what the masculine is doing, and that's both on.
I think that's a really reasonable definition of it.
That's micro, macro, like it happens out here in the real world,
exactly.
and it happens inside you as well.
Yeah. And I guess it's reasonable that some will hear what you just said in its real raw simplicity and beautifully condensed and articulated. Some will hear that and it won't make any sense, I suppose. And then others will feel really seen as they feel really resonant with that. And that's the nature of probably any dialogue, really. I'm sure you could offer a heap of musical jargon that would just tune me right out. I couldn't possibly stay with it. So you're either resonant with the content or you're not, and both are totally okay. So if we ground it into an example, like if I feel an emotion move through me, like I get triggered in some sort of human relationship, or sometimes the absence of it, like I feel, if I were to feel real loneliness, going and making the time to sit with it in my life, often in the form of meditation. So I sit on the couch or whatever, I found a window, I put the right music on, incense, whatever, like it takes this form.
Which is, like, this is, so sorry to interrupt, but this feels like this is kind of part of your ritual of self-care, right? So we're back in that love language kind of space.
Yeah.
The idea of it, not necessarily
I would
the
be
love
creating quality time for myself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're doing something something beautiful for yourself.
Yeah. So we're on a couch right now. So sitting on this couch with no one around and creating a space really of non-distraction, which would be quality time. So I'm not diluting the quality by allowing other variables to enter. And then I'm sitting there and I'm getting really quiet, and I'm, with some practice, let's say, present to how my heart feels. So like literally the geography of the middle of my chest. And I notice that I feel really sad. And there is a million forms in which that can present as colors and lights and visual forms, and this whole like paradox of clairsentience and clairvoyance and how our inner world reveals things to us. For interest's sake, clairvoyance being visual and clairsentience being like a feeling, like a knowing. That's more familiar to me, the feeling and knowing space. Whereas you speak to people who are clairvoyant, it sounds like, watching Marvel films on the inside of their world all the time. So I am creating a container of quality time, masquerading as introspection in this instance, where there is nothing in the way of that feeling being felt. Listening to these pods, I talk a lot about the pod. Let's say we talk about feeling feelings and being authentic with yourself or whatever. And I guess this is the form that it can take, because that can sound a bit vague, I suppose. So
I don't think so. Like,
no.
Part of me is like hearing you describe your process of it, and just thinking about where it's I guess I'm trying to not be judgmental, but it's just maybe from an observation point of view. imagining where a lot of people's lives, and sometimes where my life is at, with Instagram and emails, and it's literally we've built these distraction machines that stop us doing exactly what you're talking about.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I don't think any of it is not up for grabs.
Okay.
I think it's all of it's super important.
It's fun how it ties in the different structures we've just traversed kind of thing. Yeah. So we're providing at once a moment of quality time. There's probably others in there as well. I mean, you could hug yourself, you could rub arms. And if you were tuned to like a self-nourishment kind of energy, like a posturing inside of you, and I reckon you could really meet, it's not something I practice, but that would be an example of meeting your physical touch needs for sure. So overlaying, we've now got the love languages at play, but we've also got esoteric Hinduism in that sense. Like we've got esoteric spirituality in play of, I'm now the container for the energy to move through. And some schools of thought just call that integration. So you're allowing a feeling to be felt.
Yeah.
What's really interesting to me that pops up like a light bulb talking about this is that what's making the feeling being felt, in some ways it's the absence of distraction. In some ways it's the intention of creating a space so that it's got the dance floor to dance out. That's a very Shiva Shakti masculine feminine metaphor. And another one is that the light of consciousness itself, it's the looking that moves it.
Yeah.
That's my favorite.
I like the idea of, you're so important to me that I want to do this for you. The actual art of caring and loving yourself that much that you go, this is really important.
Yeah.
I have a friend who had kids way before me, and he always does this really beautiful thing. Like, he lives in New Zealand, so we only get to chat from time to time. But he does this really beautiful thing, and I think you can fold it out into yourself as well.
Yeah.
It's like, hey man, it's good, good day, mate. I won't do the accent, but I'm just on my way to pick up the kids. I've got a spare 10 minutes, and I thought we could just have a chat. G'day, little Joey. It's not their name. And they get in the car. And anyway, it's been really great to chat to you, Paul. I've got someone super important that's just jumped in the car, so we'll pick this up another time. It's been great to chat.
Yeah.
And in that thing, like, the kid turns to dad and just goes, "Who's coming?" And it's like, "It's you, buddy. You're the super important person. That's why I have to hang up." And I think like that, just the art of, or the act, of treating yourself with such beautiful reverence and kindness and love, like that does something in and of itself as well.
Yeah.
You're worth nourishing. You're worth spending time with. You're worth investing in,
Well, yeah. It presses all the buttons. I think that what jumps out, and it is a bit cliche, I suppose, but that's the sort of like the inner child mechanism of conventional psychology as I've experienced it in therapy, I guess. So the idea that, like we were saying the other day in a previous pod, the one you've been looking for all these decades is you. So you use the analogy of father and son. Well, how about adult self and child self?
Yeah.
Or human self and higher self, or personality and inner being. It's what's consistent is that they're all the same. They're all powerfully effective, and they're all in their way dualistic, which matches the world that we're in. So the sort of spiritual premise being that we come from a space where everything's one. Disconnect is not possible in that space.
That's such a powerful statement.
Right.
Like, you just skipping
to
over
contemplate.
it. Well, yeah. Well,
the reason it's powerful is because we live in this plane where disconnect is apparent. How powerful! What a powerful tool. I find it movingly beautiful to talk about, even though it's the nuts and bolts. It's the basics, I guess. So the premise is that we come from a plane of absolute unification, gratification. You can imagine what it would be to swim around in perfect love. Like, any idea you can have, you can manifest instantly. There's no time. So it's gratification is instant. So if you wanted the world's best sandwich or the world's best orgasm or the an exalted triumph or all at
Or
once.
an orgasm sandwich. You just read my mind.
Then it's instant. And so the premise is like, what if we were to, how do we deepen that? So if infinity as God, as Paul, as any listener, there really is no separation, wanted to experience itself in greater detail, with greater joy, to dance an ever more extravagant dance. You're getting bored. I can just satisfy. It's like playing a video game with all the cheat codes on. It's fun for a bit, and then it gets cooked really fast. And you're like, damn it, I've wrecked it. Nobody's wrecked God. I'm not asserting
No,
that.
I get the video game metaphor. I've done it before Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, well,
sucks after half an
it
hour.
sucks. Yeah, and it's like now you need a challenge, I suppose. But maybe challenge isn't the right word. But you need diversity of experience, and so then you go, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to take my very nature and implant it into an individuation that gets to experience absolute abundance and the dearth of it, hot and cold, high and low, union and separation.
Yeah.
And, have a look around. That's the world we live in. So you'll have a hard time convincing me that it's broke. A beautiful thing I love and something I work with the kids, and funnily enough, it's something that came before the kids and still has applicability. And it's that there's so much suffering in the world, Dad, or there's so much suffering in the world, to me. And if we took it all away, we would live in a world without a universe, like this physical universe we find ourselves in. We'd live in a universe without compassion. And everyone I ask, would you want to live in a universe without compassion? There's an instant, never. Well, you can't have compassion without suffering.
Can I play devil's advocate? If there is no suffering, do you need compassion?
That's the same thing I just said, not to
I know,
poison the well. But
no, but they're saying, no, I don't want to live in a world without compassion. And you're like, well, but what about if you don't need compassion?
That's the point. So, sorry.
Maybe I misunderstood. But part of me is like, of course, everyone's going to say well, they want compassion because there is suffering. What I'm saying is if there isn't suffering, do they need compassion? And maybe they would go, I don't want compassion. I don't need it.
Well, I guess what I'm asserting here is that
have
actually
I misunderstood it?
No. Let's just go with it. So the premise is that there's a deep understanding that we do want to practice compassion because of what it enlivens as far as relativity, meaning how we relate to other people,
to others,
which is really how we relate to ourselves, in that there's only one of us in the room, but also we get to experience ourselves through peering into the experience of other people. I mean, yeah. So
where did you just go?
Do you want to live in a universe where you don't get to experience compassion? Think about it. So I invite you to think about it like right now. You've worked it out.
It pushes me into my science brain because my science brain goes, well, if I've never known about it because I don't need it, then I don't. I mean, because there's plenty of things I don't experience that I don't know about.
Yeah.
In this universe.
Yeah.
There's other worlds out there that I've never experienced, and I won't.
Yeah.
Yet until we develop space travel, for example. But
to me, if you were going, okay, well, we're just going to delete suffering from the coding of this particular
matrix.
Yeah. This version of Grand Theft Auto 17 that we're in.
Yeah.
Pretty high tech when you look around. Impressive coding. Yeah. And we're going to delete suffering, which we could interchange and supplant with activate God mode, activate the codes, break it. You break the game.
But do you break the game because you've known it with compassion or known it with suffering? And if you haven't ever known it with suffering, do you still break it?
Tell me, bro.
I don't know.
If you take suffering
from
your life,
it's a conundrum.
The life
isn't it?
that you've lived, this one, if you take suffering out of that, is it worth doing?
I mean, it sounds really ace. No, I get you. I understand. I'm being facetious.
Well,
there's a great cleansing in suffering, which I think no one really talks about much. Like having experienced deep suffering.
Yeah.
Like there's a burning away of all the unnecessary stuff that you seem to have accumulated in your life. And so I guess from that standpoint, I would say definitely not. I would never go without suffering because it's been such a great teacher.
Well, there's micro and macro suffering too, right? There's like the death of somebody incredibly important to you in a untimely way, too soon kind of vibe. And I feel like most people I meet think that death is always too soon. This is an innate egregiousness to it. Yeah, I think that suffering's in there for a reason.
It totally is.
And
it's a suit, like if you can bear...
Are you grateful for the suffering?
Yes.
I guess. Can you feel, how do you know that right now?
How do I know that?
Yeah.
Because suffering has brought great leaps and bounds in my comprehension of existence that I never thought would be possible.
Yeah.
It's opened me up to a sensitivity that was closed to me beforehand.
Right.
And it has also expanded my empathy because now I understand deep suffering that when I see it in other people, I have an understanding of it.
Yes.
So it's expanded my...
It changed.
Yeah, it's
it
expanded my
changed the
consciousness. And yeah.
You got to be something different because of the experience.
Yeah.
I think that's all that's ever going on.
Yeah, just different mechanisms of change.
Changing circumstances that catalyze different posturing, usually uncomfortable, and stretch this personhood as if it were muscle, stretch, repair. So you accommodate a different person. You become a different person.
The line for me has been, how much do you bypass? You know, it's such a fine line to be grateful for the suffering and the growth and everything that comes along with it. And then the flip side is to, and I did this for a while, is not allowing the human process enough.
Yeah.
And so going into that heady stuff and going into the, wow, so I feel so fortunate and thank you for the messaging, you know, thank you for the message and thank you for the event.
Yeah.
Thank you for that because it's allowed me all of this. But then there's also a very real, deep place of sadness and that I just didn't honor for a while. Well, and still have to off gas from time to time. It's like I have a little thing on my phone and it's like Paul's off gassing morning.
Okay.
You know, it's just like okay.
A calendar appointment.
It's a little bit. And then that's to the self-care.
Got to workshop a better verb than off gas, but yeah.
Yeah. But it's like, I'll cry or I'll, and generally I've got songs that I know make me feel really sad and remind me of what happened.
Yeah.
And I just go as deep into it as I can.
Yeah.
I push forward into all the things that could have been and that never will be. And like, I just really go into that because that animalistic part of me needs it. And otherwise I'm not that functional. Yeah.
Are there times when you go to do that? Like, are you always thinking about the one cluster of trauma? Are you always thinking about the one kind of, not icky memory, but
that's usually
incredible catalyst to change?
That's usually the one that has the most juice.
So 9 times out of 10,
so wrong.
That's the one that you go to. So when it's one time out of 10.
It was so much, it's such a bigger event than anything else that happened in my life.
Yeah.
Like even the little things that happened as a kid, whether it's like, you're not good enough at school or being bullied or whatever, all that sort of stuff that builds you and makes you into the thing that you are now.
So you're describing the relativity of trauma, that some things are bigger than others.
Yeah, and for me, my experience of it was such a big thing that it's just like everything else kind of pales into.
Yeah.
But I'm sure, like, everybody's pain is everybody's pain. I totally get that. I have people talk to me sometimes and they're like, I can't believe what you've been through or whatever. And you're like, I can't believe you're still happy or whatever. And people just are how they are. Everyone's pain is still, if you've only been to 10 out of 100 of pain, you don't know what the other 90 is like, but still your pain. It's still the depth of your pain. And it's all relevant.
Yeah.
And all as equally important as the others,
I think so. I think that this plane, this human life, we wake up in from relatively different starting points, different coordinate points we start from. The whole thing's driven by growth. And so you'll swing from comfort to discomfort in your inner world, I mean. You'll swing from pain to expansion. And so the game is to work with it. And so the nuance is like, okay, well, we're going to suffer. Just give me it all now. And sometimes there is a leaning into suffering that's utterly exquisite and really functional. And I bet because you're working on mastering what it is to off-gas, to decompress with regularity, coming back. That's your masculine aspect providing an open and empty space for that feeling to come up and out. Why? Because it's neuroregulatory, so it lands in the viscera, it lands in the body. Two, because it's kind of like meeting the promise of life, like playing out. It's purposeful. I'm going to, the stuff, life has fed me stuff, and I'm going to gestate it, process it, and allow it to do its work on me. And all of that is just an innate neutral process unless it feels amazing to do, which is to say, it brings you closer to yourself because you're moving towards the very middle of your life.
Yeah.
When you provide a container for the stuff that's in your heart and you meet your heart exactly where it lies, you find yourself in the very middle of life.
Yeah.
And it feels amazing. It feels like truth. It feels like coming home. And my favorite, it feels like Pauling in an optimal way. It's the closest Paul can get to Paul.
I feel like the block for me has been the cynic in me, which is like enough intelligence to realize some of the mechanisms, but not enough spirituality or openness to allow it to affect me positively. The skeptic was like, how sad. How sad. Because we're meaning-making machines. That's how we understand things. It's like we give things meaning, we tell ourselves stories.
Yeah.
And so the beginning into that space was really difficult for me because I had such a, and I only say this because there may be other people that feel like that too. It's the same thing about communicating with the dead, like, can you, and it's like, of course you can't. Well, do we really know that? Some people seem to, and there's some really amazing, spiritual kind of, translators, let's call them that. But my thing was, how sad that you have to make up a story about what happened to give meaning to your suffering. And it stopped the process of the suffering for a long time.
Yeah.
It stopped it being able to, I was able to let it burn away all the unimportant stuff, but it had no power to then expand me.
Yeah. It's funny. I see that as spiritual bypass in a way. It's like taking a lofty concept like nothing can harm me, who I actually am, because my core self, my source self, was never born and can never die. And so it's only the living in this matrix simulation that requires or encourages or allows me to slip into the accident of story making while I'm here.
But I didn't have that.
Didn't have what?
I didn't have that understanding. Like you have that as quite a core tenet of who you are.
Yeah.
Whereas I grew up in New Zealand as a non-practicing Christian, middle class kind of. And so for me, I was very much in matter, in dense matter. Kooky kid, weird things. I think about like time. I have these memories of like being a little kid on my BMX and thinking about whether time's preordained or not. But then as soon as hormones kicked in and, girls came along, I was very much in my body, in matter. And so for me, I didn't have that underpinning.
Yeah, sure,
and I think a lot of people maybe don't. They don't have that really, they weren't gifted that understanding of that being a potential way to believe about existence. Well, does that make sense?
It does. It does. I don't know if this is helpful, but for me, those ideas didn't enter. I mean, who knows what? One of my parents is a particularly esoteric person and was lit up by a few different spiritual modalities, if you like, and so those were definitely filtering down. Concepts like EQ and were a big part, I think, as far as I can tell. But actual spiritual practice didn't enter till I'm 15 or something. Wow. Yeah, so I relate to all of the rest of it as well.
But I'm also wowing at you entered spiritual practice at 15. Like, I was playing in bands.
Yeah.
That was my spiritual practice, I guess.
Well, it took the form of being taught to meditate. And then...
Wow.
I'm
still that's still mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
When I think about what I was doing when I was 15.
Yeah.
still fanging around being a dickhead.
Yeah, but it's not like we're doing one thing, I suppose, is worth adding here. It's like I was still terrified and elated at the prospect of girls.
No, but I guess what I'm wowing at is that you were opening a door open to you the possibility of accessing consciousness.
Yeah.
Whereas I was still, I don't want to say a victim of it, but I was still at the behest of my consciousness rather than understanding I could interact with it.
It's certainly something I'm grateful for then.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. Naturally, it's got its double-edgedness. So much of probably most of us, let's say, if not all, end up having a big revelation where we thought things were a certain way and they're not that way. What that took the form of in my life was over-spiritualization, which might sound like a bit of a joke. Like if you listen to the episodes of the pod or something, you might go, you're probably over-spiritualizing things all the time. But for me, it's way
it's how
more
you understand things.
Right. So it's the lens I look through and therefore the language takes that shape. But actually in functional practice, it's a lot better than it was in this way. And that is that I regard my humanity so much more importantly than I used to. And for me, I was talking quite openly about feminine aspects coming online, and the bits that are an interesting dichotomy is can you have preciousness without fragility? Precious implies incredible value. I don't know if in a literal sense, does precious imply breakability to you, or does it only imply value?
Value for me, yeah.
Just
for
value.
me when I say, yeah.
Yeah. So there's probably a better word then. But like, I feel like preciousness, if it implies value, then it could be taken as well, maybe in a worldly sense. Another way to look at it is, I think I've said before, but if you're going to set a boundary around a thing, it implies that it's breakable. It implies that it's vulnerable, fragile, hurtable, maybe even irreplaceable. I don't know. But it implies that the thing that you would protect is so valuable but can be harmed. And if I was operating from way too much spiritualization of things, way too much spiritual regard. So I functioned, particularly relationally, and as a paramedic certainly, as a creature who took care of themselves, practiced, high EQ and did decompressive practices both spiritually and psychologically and healthy exercise and healthy eating. There's blips and downturns in all of that as I go through life. Like I've, drugs and alcohol in small doses at different points of experimentation and stress and all the kind of ugly, but let's say typically relatable sort of things. But the over-spiritualization is functioning as like, I love so much and I love so completely that I essentially give myself away, which is to say that I wasn't regarding the fact that the thing giving love here is a finite resource too. And the paramedic thing is a great example because it's like, I'll just keep attending, literally. I'll keep interfacing with the crisis of another because I can. And this is what love looks like. And it's fun and I'm drawn to it. But there was a disconnect. You can say whatever you want. Like maybe I needed to be a helper to have an identity. Maybe that's the only way I could understand love. And there's truth in all of those. But there's relativity to it as well. Because to me, there was an authenticity to loving from my soul in that way. Which sounds like lofty language, but all I mean is if I'm loving from the part that can't be exhausted, how exquisite. And most people coming from a spiritual disposition will relate to that there is a part of me that's ancient and inexhaustible and how beautiful. But we can really miss the mark in our human life, meaning the only thing we're actually doing here, right now I'm incarnate in a body, and the most efficient place for me to be is in that body. And if I'm not regarding that body or the personhood as a finite resource that is very exhaustible, then I am setting myself up for a human disaster, which is ironically or fittingly a spiritual disaster, because spirit chose to come here and experience the Lukeness of it all. And Luke is deeply flawed, and equally deeply wonderful, and needs regard, needs maintenance, needs care. So yeah, it's basically, I'm describing like coming from a foundation of spiritual oversight. Is that oversight the right word? It was an oversight that I was missing the point. And so much of my language, I feel like everything I say now, and much more than what I say, what I'm striving to be is the embodiment of, for myself and then overflowing onto others, not so much as service, but as just naturalness, is to be fully online humanistically and fully online esoterically, spiritually at the same time. And yeah, they fluctuate and they go up and down. And one of the things that manifests as is sometimes I can be too much in my mind and too much actually creating, which you might say is from my spiritual aspect. I want to change the world, in my world, in these wonderful ways. I want to grow this and I want to move here, and I want to manifest them and that. And it can be really lofty and idealistic and exquisite. But what I now am lucky enough to be able to feel in my system, and I say lucky because I didn't used to feel it, is that that'll become very dry. After a time, it loses its vividness and its ability to nourish me. And it'll start to burn out. And what I've learned is that that's time to downturn back into a chapter or a phase, let's say, of dissension back into my body. So there'll be a period of intense creativity and possibility interchanging with a period of deep feeling. And it's like, like so often people will describe about feminine energies, it's like, don't try to label me, compartmentalize me, don't intellectualize me in any way. Just let the feeling be the feeling. Let it be life itself. Feel all of it. Feel the rage, feel the sadness, feel the loneliness, feel all the stuff. And you'll find authenticity again. And you'll be able to turn back into that creativity. And the beauty is they're both utterly exquisite in their way. And they're both incredible components of myself. And yeah, every single other person on the planet, like everybody, has those exquisite aspects. And you could say they're competing with one another, like children for a mother's attention, but I don't think that's a fit. I think that they're actually divine romantic partners. And sort of one takes the steering wheel and then hands it to the other. And it creates like a sine wave, if you like, of cyclical movement through life that's kind of optimal living. And funnily enough, that sine wave of up and down propels a being forward in a way that I understand, like what like a conventional or a contemporary version of enlightened living is where I really honor my spiritual aspects in alignment with what's inspired at the time. And then when it's time, I really honor the descending aspects, the rooting down into the ground. And I feel all the muck, all the dirt, mud, pus, blood. And it enables me to birth something new, which expands into this, like an elastic band being pulled down, and then it launches up into greater, lofty, tapping into my infinity, creativity of what's possible. So from the finite to the infinite. Over and over and over, and realizing that they're both as divine as the other, which might tie in nicely with, yes, we need suffering.
Just to bring it back on.
Yeah. That's my favorite Paul laugh in 3 episodes of the podcast.
The maniacal.
What comes up for you in hearing all those words?
Like I totally, I resonate with all of that.
Yeah.
I do. Like, I guess for me, it feels like I don't think I've spent enough time examining how it plays out to find patterns like that in my life. But it sounds to me when I hear you talking about that, it's like, you go out and you expand out into the world and you're expanding your consciousness and you're expanding the potentiality of what it is of your life. And then you acknowledge when that season seems to have run its course, and then there's a deep nourishment of, it's like summer, winter, summer.
Yeah.
Moving through the seasons and stuff.
And morning, night, like.
Yeah, exactly. And you just collect, You know, you collect those, and maybe it's something I need to be a bit more aware of like, I probably am still a little harder on myself in those spaces of downturn.
Yeah.
You know, like, come on, man, you should still be being, you know, productive, and you still got to be doing stuff.
Yeah.
A human doing.
Yeah.
You know? And I think they're just old patterns that I'm sure many of my friends would disagree. A lot of friends look at me and what I do, and they're kind of like, what do you do?
Yeah.
You know, you don't seem to do anything.
Yeah.
But there's always lots of things going on. And I think, you know, I'm probably my harshest critic when it comes to that stuff. So yeah, just when I'm hearing you talk about it, just taking stock of the reverence for the process that you have, but then also the care that you have for yourself, and the understanding of that is a complete cycle. You know, that it's not, there's nothing incomplete about any of it. Yeah.
It's like coming back, we went from perfect love, you know, in some God space, to individuating into this space where there's duality, and it's meeting the duality fully.
Yeah.
It's playing the game.
Yeah.
With full participation. And, you know, full is a maybe a fitting word, and maybe has beautiful efficacy here. But it's also going to fall really short, because there's no complete, there's no full. This continues. It's just why it's so scary to play. It's why, for me, like,
when you say full, though, for me, it means like embodied.
Yeah.
Like as much as you can muster into being in it, that's what you're doing.
Yeah. So playing the game with full participation, and we will find more participation down the road. It's just like you were saying before, I'm going to expand and embody even more God. The game doesn't stop. And so concepts of talking about enlightenment, which used to be, from a cultural point of view, for me, kind of everything.
Yeah.
Attain the goal, attain the goal, attain the goal. And you never dare to think like, oh, I'm going to do it this life, or get off the karmic wheel in the Buddhist sense, or attain the goal in the Hindu sense, or whatever. And then life expands into a few more dimensions, which sounds awesome, like the plant medicine just kicked in, but which might sound terrifying to some. But no, it's actually it's better, sure, but you're playing the game with more complexity, which is what getting older feels like, doesn't it? All of a sudden, like, the concept of life isn't as simple as left or right politics. Life isn't as simple as, you know, what's maybe the most important one, as right or wrong. Far out. Morality, you know, the kind of boredom of it. It's like, no, like, how do I explain to you how you've broken my heart without blaming you for breaking my heart? Because I stepped into this with you, and I'm not blaming myself either, but here we are. And the real fun bit is, and honoring the finite bit, was like, and could you please not break my heart again? And here's how I need you to do that. Because the over spiritualization will be like, oh, so thanks for breaking my heart. Let's just move forward. Thanks so much. It was like, thanks so much. And in order to honor the vessel I'm inside of, no more domestic violence. Never again. And if it ever happens again, you'll never see me again. And that won't be me not loving you, because I will love you forever, but you'll never see me again, because I love myself in some ways just as much, and in other ways more, because I have to love myself more, because I'm the only one that can actually know what I'm experiencing. And that can be scary, because it's so easy for many of us to love outside of ourselves. But 51% of my love has to go to me, or I'm not steady enough to show up as really me in any of my relationships. So you never get to meet me. The counterfeit term that you inspired me with years ago, and I keep using and you've stopped using. Yeah, exactly. Appropriate face. I'm Paul. Yeah. So where was I?
Counterfeit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Showing up as your authentic self.
Giving ourselves permission to take care of ourselves. And if we swing too far that way, and sometimes we do for a period and it's healthy or whatever, but the ending of that period might be realizing you've become a bit prickly and a bit too self-regarding. And I think those moments happen, like when we yell at our kids accidentally, kind of thing, and then have to reel ourselves back in. That would only my, as opposed to deliberately. 1, 2, 3, yell. 1, 2, 3, chastise. 1, 2, 3, crush. Yeah. So just bringing online this sort of self-regard and normalizing it.
Yeah.
And then it means it's actually us. It's actually us attending these conversations and these relationships. Our kids get to meet us, our friends get to meet us, our spouses get to know us. And as it happens, that's not just good for us, it's good for the gander. It's not just good for them geese.
Goosies.
It's also good for the gander. So the best thing in my experience or view or something, the best thing any of us can do is be ourselves. And that is the cheesiest thing ever, but it's the only thing that matters. It's like, if I can align with myself, the shit I do out in the world is transcendent.
Mm.
And when I say I mean us. I mean all of
Everyone,
us.
yeah.
Inversely, if I show up as a diluted version of myself, it's wishy-washy.
Mm.
So you could say that the way that I can get actual divine power into this world is by being the very center of my life. And then I can love everybody well. It's as if then I become a vortex for stuff to come through.
Yeah.
And to traditional spiritual views of humility, you're trying to get out of the way to let God through.
Mm.
And it's not that, but it's like there's another layer to it where the way that I practice this is with incredible self-regard, where I really take care of myself.
Mm.
And I often wonder whether did ancient spirituality miss that? And it's not miss it. As soon as I say it's not miss it. It's like, has spiritual practice, has the frontier of the species evolved and changed so that humility alone won't do it anymore? That to have self-regard, so many people are disconnected from self and taking care of these human aspects. So they get to be neurostable. They get to be healthy. And then it's as if the human is the tripod grounded down into the ground to, the vortex in the middle of your chest to let divine energy through to this plane. This almost sounds like a sci-fi flick, but to me, that's the only thing going on.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I feel like a lot of those ancient texts, we were still subsistence living, and I think that has effects on what is possible.
Yeah.
And we have so much abundant, economics and energy in so much of the world now that it means we can have conversations like this. It means that people can have access to information, but also they've got time to ponder their navel, and that just wasn't possible previously.
Yeah. Parallel to that and supportive, complementary of it is that, the golden age of different spiritual apexes, like, golden age of the Buddha talked about in, Central Asia, whatever, subcontinent, that it awakened the vibration and launched it upwards, and maybe it comes back down a little, but it's forever, its baseline is changed. And so that would be equivalent in different dimensions, but the frontier of spiritual evolution moving. And there's a place, reasonable friends of mine would argue, like, no, it's always been the same. The human machine is the same thing. And in some ways that's true. We did halt evolution, and we can talk about it from that level. But two things can be true at the same time. And on this other spiritual plane, to me, it's changing. And so, in a way that excites me, that expands the world, that expands human existence into new possibilities. Like, we were trying to wake up to, are we just glorified ape men? And on some level, yeah. Yeah. Go and deprive your ape man suit of water and food and sex and human contact and dialogue and shelter and for a month and see what happens, So yeah, we do have those sort of beautiful, grounding human necessities. But at the same time, this other aspect is growing and growing and growing. So it's sort of, I don't know, quite digestible that there is, at least from most spiritual cats I encounter, not off the deep end ones, but more everyday kind of cats that are, I understand that I am a spiritual being having a human experience. That feels like normalized, whereas that wouldn't have been.
No.
At another time. And there's all religious cohorts.
Dude, not even like 50 years ago.
Right.
Even 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So that keeps ascending and ascending and ascending. And that's probably the right word in a tedious way maybe. But until what? And so it's like, okay, we're discovering our own nature. So my nature is divine. So I can afford to be compassionate to all.
Mm.
Whereas some species of animals aren't really like that. They're a bit more lone, or they're a bit more transactional than we might like to be. So you start to look at the formation of society. Now we're going to regard like the most exalted societies is where we care about something like gentlemanliness, where we care about something like morality, where the mark of a society is how well they take care of their lowest. And yeah, we suck at all this in ugly ways we can spend days talking about. That's not much fun and a bit of a downer. And you could argue whether talking about it makes it any better or not. That's all valid. But from my perspective, I'm watching this expand more and more. And in doing so, we are accommodating more and more divine quality into ourselves all the time. And maybe grounding all of that, one of those is the capacity to create vibrationally. The recognition that if I regard myself lovingly and feel love inside of my system, I tend to draw more loving energies into my system. And that's another one of those things that some people would be like, what? That's nonsense. And others would be like, no, that's very apparent in my life. If I behave like a dickhead, if I stub my toe in the morning and I don't kind of self-correct or be gentle with myself and sit and cry or do whatever I've got to do, I tend to stub my toe all day.
Mm.
It's as if it's a bit of a snowball. Well, the snowball goes off the other aspect of the mountain as well. Whereas if I get up and I practice self-love and self-regard, then I tend to manifest more peace than I otherwise would. Can we take that mechanism and that knowing and become more active co-creators in our life? And there's a whole new age movement around manifestation. And yes, some of it's inauthentic and pseudo, and some of it's magical and at the leading edge of human evolution. And that to me is embodying yet another quality of God. Yes, once upon a time we only practiced humility as we're related to spirituality, because we're terrified of narcissism and self-care, which probably comes from survivalism, like you were talking about. But as we transcend that, it's like, okay, humility. What else we got? Well, another one would be creativity. One of the aspects of creativity is that it's kind of unapologetic. It operates from inspiration, and it doesn't need somebody else to validate it. And that's disagreeability. It's not very humble. In fact, it can be quite contradictory to humility. So letting in these other, God's not just humble. God's all of it. God's also passionate and unapologetic and present, You might even say these are more masculine qualities of like disagreeability. Like I'm going to follow, like you think about, we're talking about Dylan and Joni Mitchell off air, like those creative energies were undeniable. I remember hearing about anybody proximal to SNL when Eddie Murphy came through, like the phenom of all time SNL, I don't think that's all that arguable. And he would not be denied. And regardless of any personal interactions, like that creative force was just going to blow a hole in. You better funnel it through or it's going to rip the place apart. That, what I mean is like creativity has this unapologetic quality that might throw in the face of humility. But luckily we're multidimensional creatures that can have both online. Yeah, so we can dare to say how we really feel.
Beautiful.
Let's go. This is my friend Brian. And this captures the whole thing. Okay, here is a question from Brian for Paul. There is some prologue around it. If we are all animals and we are all energy in some form, and some animals do unspeakable acts of cruelty, everything in the garden is trying to dominate each other for energy. Does it really matter what we do on this earth? The cat that kills for fun, the dictator that kills for fun, and most of us that eat meat, that has spent its life in horrifying conditions, knowingly, but willingly, unconsciously, sometimes just eating for fun. Does it really matter? Are we all going back to the same place as energy anyways?
No, it doesn't matter, is the short answer. But the long answer is obviously more complex than that. I think it's such a big question, isn't it? It's like the grunty kind of. Yeah, I mean, you can approach it from the point of view that you are just got your God eating yourself, and this is all. But then the question for me becomes, but how do you want to interact with it? So, yes, there is unspeakable horrors happening to all sorts of animals and things. I choose, and my family chooses to source meat that's ethically raised and just has one bad day, as we like to say. There's we live on acreage, and we process the chickens that we have
Harvest.
once they're out of their kind of producing years, but they live an amazing life until that one bad day. And
How incredibly convenient for this question.
And it's not and it's not a fun day.
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said for actually taking the life of an animal yourself. So you get to experience the sacred nature of ending a life, because birth and death are both sacred acts. And in my, I think, and you become more connected to the truth of what's going on when you've been a part of the process. And it doesn't mean you want to be a part of the process all the time. There's a convenience, and definitely a convenience in getting somebody else to butcher an animal, but everybody is sovereign to what they can handle and what they want to handle in their life. I have friends who, my cousin in New Zealand here will disappear for 2 weeks, and he'll take a gun, a swag, and maybe some water, and that's it. And he'll start a fire. He'll go shoot a pig. He'll gut it, clean it all out, cook it on the fire. How you going?
Yeah.
And then there are other people to the other extreme who don't eat animals at all. And I think, the truth of it is everybody is having their own experience, and so everybody is sovereign in that space. For me personally, it's like I've been a vegetarian for a while. For my body type, I'm fairly lean, and the efficiency of protein through eating animals the people are going to disagree with this, but the profile of minerals, vitamins, amino acids found in meat, it's almost unparalleled. So I don't know if I'm answering the question or not, but for me personally, it comes down to, what do you want? Do you want to live in a world where for your pleasure or for your sustenance there is incredible suffering and there is horrific acts? And if so, if you don't care about that, and that's okay, then that you can support that system, the factory farming thing. I mean, we don't really have that in Australia so much. It's cheaper for us to raise our animals on pasture. But in the United States, obviously, there's a whole other system that plays out, which I don't know enough about to really speak about. But from the very little that I've seen, looks fairly horrific, but seems to concentrate a lot of power and money in one specific area. Maybe that's why that's happening. Maybe they need to do that to feed that many people at that price. I don't know. But yeah, what do you want? What do you want to live? What kind of world do you want to live in? And you create that world. There's a really beautiful thing happened. And it was kind of weird to experience at the same time, where Australia decided they didn't want to eat caged eggs anymore.
Yeah.
I think it was 10, 15 years ago or so.
Longer, but yeah.
Maybe it was.
It became more taboo than anything I can remember, more consensual and broadly agreed upon.
It was almost like an uplift in the consciousness, where everyone just went, "Oh, I'll pay $5 more for my eggs, for my dozen eggs, so they're not living in cages and they can live." And then this strange kind of thing happened where, these massive operations with millions of dollars invested in caged eggs all of a sudden found them in a position where no one wanted their eggs anymore. So then they, obviously having large amounts of capital, they lobbied government to change what it meant to have a free-range egg. I don't know if you know any of this stuff, but the definition of free-range changed from, a density of 1,000 chicken. The numbers are not correct, but it was something like 1,000 chickens per acre became 8,000 chickens per acre, and I feel like as the globulous or nebulous globule that we are as consciousness and society, we get to decide how we want it to be. And whether you want to be early to that party or whether you don't want to be is entirely up to you. But like I've tried to do in most of my life, the removal of judgment is such an important part in that. The removal of judgment of yourself, because everybody's just doing the best that they can. And that might sound dismissing, but it's like, it's not to me. It's the truth. Everybody is doing what they think is right to the best of their ability. And that's all you can ever ask of someone. But yeah, I have wrestled with that question myself. It's funny, like having experienced some extraordinary spiritual spaces, let's say, from that space, it's just the energy eating itself. It's just the same system going around, absorbing itself to sustain itself until it can no longer sustain itself.
And to make the pod go mega dark, you could kill me and eat me right now and it would be the same thing.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
No, I'm not dismissing that at all, but I'm just saying that there's...
I don't see that as dismissal. I am interested, like, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, yeah. What I mean by chucking in the quip about Paul eating Luke is that it is God eating God. And there's no way around that. God eating, I think the sort of Buddhist proverb is like God eating God to sustain God upon God, something like, that's bastardizing language or something like that.
Yeah.
Certain like retreats or whatever are driven by the sacredness of food consumption at mealtime. So there's no talking. And it's so a beautiful thing that I might have read Ram Dass 20 years ago or something, but it's like, which he would have borrowed from Buddhism, I'd suggest, but spoon goes in the food, meal lands on table, watch the momentum in your system to pick up the spoon. Where the mammal, the machine, and the satiation of the mind as well, because it occupies it with something and it's quite gratifying. Food's incredibly gratifying. Maybe in some ways the most gratifying. Well, it's gratifying in a really primal way.
Yes.
Like it's if you deprive yourself of food, you'll work and then reintroduce it in small amounts. Yes. It's like, whoa, this is drugs.
Yeah.
So you go to
quite literally sometimes.
Yeah. Go to pick up the spoon and then pause and watch the momentum that wants to grab the spoon. The satiator kind of thing. And then now you got the spoon. Watch the impetus to dig it into the bowl of food, into the rice and beans or whatever, and then slow it down and like you almost diffuse the tension or that by dissolving that momentum, and then you choose from emptiness to put the spoon in the bowl, and then watch maybe the most intense one is to put it in your mouth and you like hold. It's like if you watch a baby, like a 3-month-old or a little older, say an 8-month-old that's eating puree or whatever at the high chair, and if you were to go to put it in its mouth and then prop, it wants to kill you. It's like, don't you dare tease me. So you're doing that to yourself, but to tease out the machinations of the machine. And kind of like you're in charge of them, not them in charge of you. So pause before picking up the spoon, pause before digging in the bowl, pause before putting in your mouth, then pause before chewing, then pause before swallowing. It breaks it down, and something in that, one might really peer into this is God using an apparatus, a spoon, of God to shovel God into God for God's sustenance. And so God can continue to sustain and explore the world, which is to say, to sustain God, to survey God or something, to experience God. That's just what comes up for me when you ask. That's an amazing experience. And food can become incredibly sacred from something like that. I find that question both compelling and kind of confronting, I guess, because it's so charged on all the different angles. I had someone feedback a story about themselves that they were vegan for 10 years or more, and then someone said to them in an energy healing of sorts, in some sense, it might have been naturopathy, I'm not sure, said like, what's coming up is a lot of fear of death that's driving your veganism. This was the feedback to an individual person. This is not a political position. And they felt the deep truth of that in a moment. Essentially, her working out it was a her. That cuts it down.
Fitty.
Whoops! No, you definitely know who it is. That hit her like a ton of bricks of truth, and she went, "Fuck, I'm full of shit. I thought I was doing this for the sanctity of the world. I'm doing this out of pain to avoid the kind of lover, the romantic dance partner of life, which is death. You can't have one without the other. That's the reality. To the part of you that was never born and so can never die, irrelevant.
Yeah.
In the same part of you that would eat me.
My trip out of vegetarianism was a hangover and bacon and eggs.
Yeah,
Vegetarian.
Your detours.
Yeah, I was vegetarian for like a year with my wife, and then upstairs,
They would drip bacon juice
They were
down there.
cooking bacon and eggs, and we were both hungover as you are when you're young. And there was this telepathic moment where I looked over and I said, "If you cook the eggs, I'll go get the bacon," because we lived near a store. And that was it. It was over.
So
it comes from a really beautiful place. Like I think, like at least mine did. It came from a place of like, of thinking that this is all there is. That's the truth of it. For me, it's like that this matter is really important. This meat suit and this experience and everybody else's experience is really important. And that still holds true.
Yeah.
But there's also another expanded, at least from my perspective, there's another expanded experience and existence
as you grow
of the astral and ethereal and then super consciousness. That's like, there's way more going on here than we ever can understand.
Yeah. And it's this is I think why it's challenging, because it's hard to land the plane in a way that's gentle to all ears, which it's not something that interests me generally. Well, you kind of, in order to,
full
in order to
respect.
be yourself,
It's hard
you've
to
got to be
be a
willing to
vegan
upset some
and be a
some ears.
vegetarian. I don't think it's not an easy, this world is set up for
Yeah,
meat consumption.
if that's inspired for you.
I had this crazy thought the other day though, man, like, because I heard this, I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard this, I sat next to, when I was traveling back to New Zealand, this is definitely a side mission vibe, so I don't know if we want to go there, but I was flying back to New Zealand.
Disclaimer.
Yeah. I was flying back to New Zealand and
Seatbelt sign
sitting
comes on.
sitting next to this English guy, and as you do, I just sort of said, are you on holiday? And he's like, yes, actually, I'm meeting some friends there, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, this dude's pretty posh. And I said, oh, cool, man. Like, what do you do during your day? What does it? Well, I used to be a pilot in the Royal, English Air Force.
Majesty's. Yeah.
He was. Have I told you this story?
No.
He was, and he got chosen to be the personal pilot for the Windsors. So he was like the to Queenie and the other guy. And I said, as you do, I love asking, when you get opportunities like this. I also had the same opportunity to ask the manager of the High Rollers Club in the Crown Casino. I used to work in a music store there. Just ask them, like, I love asking people this question, that do weird jobs. What's probably the most misunderstood thing about, or what's the craziest thing about that people don't know? Or I better get this actual question right. Like you ask them, like, what's one thing that most people don't know about your job or know about the Windsors? And I said to him, what's the one thing that, what's something that most people don't know about the Windsors? And he said, I don't know. I mean, they don't eat anything from a supermarket or from a store. Like, all the game is shot on their estate, and they've had an organic garden for 200 years out the back of their place. So that's probably, and it got me wondering, like, that concept. All those years, it's only a recent thought, because we've had brown snakes on the property that we've killed for safety of children, etc. And then we've eaten the brown snake. And it could be psychosomatic. Gosh, I'm rambling. It could be psychosomatic. But I swear to God, there's like, for a moment, you're hyper-focused. When that's going into you, that the snake meat is in you, there's like this hyper-focus. And part of me is like, if we eat cows and lamb and chicken as the predominant meats, and they're all pretty stupid and they're all pretty docile now that they've been domesticized. Is that a word? Domesticated.
Yeah.
Is that dumbing us down? Like the Maori in New Zealand, it's like when they vanquish an enemy, will cut the heart out and eat the heart and take his...
So that they will feels
Sorry.
a little... they do.
used to. Yeah, I mean, and maybe that's not true. Maybe it's just
I think it is.
a Pākehā story that they tell to the whiteys to freak them out. Yeah, but, you know, like that idea of energy exchange. Imagine if we're just eating these docile and it's making us all docile.
Well, if it's God eating God for the sustenance of God, then it stands to reason that there's vibrational qualities in it.
I mean,
like
that's
different
crazy.
flavors across infinity.
You want wild, powerful games.
So this is about the 17th reference of Paul's hypersensitivity that he's made during the pod. So the audience is sitting there going, wow, Paul experiences a lot of sensitivity through your different experiences.
Huh?
Well, that's for whatever it's worth. I've spoken to a lot of people who, let's say, of a yogic and spiritual sensitivity disposition that describe having very different, how they experience the energy as if they can feel an echo of the existence of the creature and they eat it. I offer that not with any moral layering to it at all. Because I've been vegan and so it's coming back. So if you eat a chicken, there's often a lot of anxiety involved. Or the concept of, is it kosher? Is that kosher's the Jewish one?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking of halal.
Halal, yeah.
Where the animal has been, has its life ended in a very deliberate way. So there's a sacred ceremony to that or whatever. So I believe that would be in the wheelhouse of that, where we're trying to give the meat the highest energy that we can in a ceremonial, therefore sacred, therefore kind of like, you know, godly sense or a spiritual sense, I suppose.
Yeah.
There's
something really beautiful about that, I think.
I think so. I've been vegan for, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years and vegetarian for maybe half my adult life. And then found that it's been really nourishing, actually. I mean, that on multiple levels, to play with reintroducing things when it feels inspired. So as time's passed, the moral question of it has become less interesting.
Yeah.
That might make me a redundant human being. It's possible. But it's possible, like you might find out later, wow, I was overlooking this thing that's now really compelling and all that suffering now really means a lot to me. That may happen, but it might go the other way too. And so to the question asker, I'd say all that actually matters is what you're inspired to move towards, which is in a way saying what do the deeper aspects of you tell you to do?
Yeah.
And in order to get that conversation running more and more clearly, we polish the glass and we meditate and we do whatever we have to do to find more and more authentic relationship with ourselves. And therefore, if someone wants to talk about the rightness or the wrongness of it, which I don't think Brian is here, I think he's talking about like,
how do I wrestle with that?
Does what influences... does what we do on this plane influence anything that really matters? And the truth is absolutely and absolutely not at the same time, because to a part that never was born and can never die, what damage could possibly be done to the infinite? No damage. And yet the infinite goes to all the trouble of manifesting a universe so that we can dance these things out, so that we can grow, which is to say, revel in the joy of deeper and deeper experiences of itself, to the point that, like, maybe without an earthly plane of sorts, it's just white painted on a white canvas is God experiencing itself everywhere else. So in some ways nothing here matters. In another way it's incredibly divine. So in that sense, all I'm saying is, like, you would follow your inspiration. On a personal note, vegan for a long time, the most exquisite relationship I have with edible animals is spearfishing. It's a practice of mine, and I feel so, on a good day, when I get your ass kicked by the ocean, I feel so connected to life while doing that, and so kind of madly in love with fish and marine everything, to the point that almost hallucinogenic experiences have happened. And you add the breathwork element of going up, down, you know, all that, and so it can become quite hallucinogenic all by itself. But there is a love for the creature as I kill it. I'm reminded of that scene in Avatar where they whisper into its ear, "I see you." Yeah, It's beautiful.
I was going to say the same thing. I watched Avatar on the weekend with my daughter
Yeah.
for the first time. And there's a beautiful moment where Natiri, I think, which is
The lead woman.
the lead female, she saves the guy from Sam Worthington's character, whatever he's called, from the dogs. And she's really upset. Like, she's like, this didn't have to happen. But there's a beautiful part where she pushes a knife and kills one of they're kind of like these wild dog things.
Yeah.
And then says this beautiful kind of verse. And then later in the film, he does the same thing when he takes the life of an animal. And I think there's something really beautiful in, to kind of round out the answer. It's if it's treated with reverence and love and gratitude, I think that makes an enormous difference. My kid goes to Steiner, and they have, as you all know, you link arms and you sing a little song and gratitude and thanks to all that's provided. And I think there's definitely an energetic shift that happens. And so I think intention is a big part of that too.
Yeah.
To add to what you were saying about what is your internal, divine telling you.
Yeah. And you'll notice we didn't just solve the world's problems. We didn't
What?
This dialogue, yeah. We didn't solve.
No, of course not.
We didn't.
It's a big question.
Quell
it's
any of the tension in those things, but it's actually perhaps the dialogue is then like love as much as you can stand, and be as all. Well, there's another Ram Dass thing, but it's like from his teacher, love everybody. Yeah, love everybody and tell the truth. And when you don't like something, how do you be truthful with it while loving it at the same time? And that is the tension we live in all the time. How do I love this well without losing myself? If this thing's really hurting me, how do I love it well? How do I do that? How do I welcome in this process? And there's a lot of ways to answer that, but that is the conundrum of life. That is the dilemma that you could say is the living of life itself. Not a thing to be solved and put on the shelf to never come back. It's actually perpetual. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Brian, for catalyzing some eclectic dialogue. Yeah.
This question is from Chris. He says, do Westerners use cute sayings to make their way of life feel better? What comes around goes around. Good things happen to good people. Good things happen to those who wait. It's good karma to do this or bad karma to do that. Every single one of these comfort sayings does not work if you put them through the, for example, Gaza filter or the Somalian filter. What did they do wrong? That's heavy.
What?
That's a deep and heavy
hold on.
question.
So what do you think that what did they do wrong bit means? Like those people
What did the people in Gaza... what did they do
tragedy.
wrong? Yeah, why are they getting smashed?
Oh, what goes around comes around, and so
And so he's like kind of going.
Yeah.
Are we just kind of like? Yeah.
Well, let's go, I guess. So does a catch cry like that? Is it going to apply in all circumstances? Certainly not. If you were to say that, like, to somebody who just lost their family, like, love is all there is. Let it be. They both Beatles references. Those things have potency in the right context, and inversely can be incredibly damaging in the wrong context. Does that follow?
Mm-hmm.
So there's an applicability or a discernment of applicability in these things. And so the deeper dialogue is, am I coming from, sayings, let's say sayings is a metaphor for a way of being, reading the moment, you could say. What I hear in that is, when is something authentic and when is something dogmatic? Dogma is a hot topic in spiritual concepts. Perhaps not anymore. Perhaps it used to be. But the ideal at play is like, if you practice something in the pursuit of something really pure and authentic and beautiful, let's say an authentic interface with yourself or with God, then it's really beautiful. But if you make it so routine and 5 times a day, every day, or whatever it is, that you can dilute it right out and forget why you're doing what you're doing. And that applies to all areas of life, like certainly relationally. Can you imagine how dogmatic and, oh no, we're partners, we're the deepest of companions, but you haven't really seen each other in decades. There's been no moment of authentic presence because we're on autopilot or whatever. So this, like, how do you know whether something's dogmatic or not, or authentic or not? And that isn't, there's probably shades. It's not one or the other. It's not binary. There's a spectrum in between it. So how do I, in the royal sense of I, in the collective sense of I, we, how do we show up and really be there? I mean, we've covered it a lot in this pod, but there's something about, is something true in your body and not just your mind? So what comes to mind is like, the thing I am offering here, is it aligned with, the core aspects of myself? Does my mind agree with it in a wisdom sense? Does my heart align with it in a deeply compassionate and love honoring sense? And so does this feel true in my body? The scary part of that is that you might have to throw some old concepts out, something that you really covet, like that everything's God, and coming back to something like that, a state of surrender is always the appropriate response, until it's not. Until something you recognize as not love, like if somebody is perpetrating something upon you, and you keep trying to default to surrender and love and kindness for this person, and it just doesn't fucking work. And it's as if you're in this dance with reality that's trying to tease you into being a more diverse creature, to imbue resilience and knowledge of self and all these beautiful things. But it's like, hey, that really worked well for you in this span of time, but I'm going to set you up to complexify and grow by spinning that on its top, by making something that felt irrefutably divine, like it's all God, feel incredibly challenged and maybe inverse. So you might have to give a powerful no, something that doesn't feel monk-like to you at all. And when the no doesn't work, you might have to tell somebody to fuck right off, and never come near my people again. You go, well, that's not very sacred and spiritual and doesn't look right. But it's the only thing that feels authentic left to do, because everything else is draining me, killing me, and feeling really dry and dogmatic and inauthentic. And so it teases out this more complex thing. I think that happens all the time. I think that sometimes growth looks exactly like that. To take the thing you trusted and realize you've probably overinvested in it now, it's become dry, and we're going to swing back the other way a little bit. I think it happens all the time. Yeah, I think that's what I've got for Chris. What comes up for you?
I mean, it's not a small question.
It's a good one, actually. It's a good one.
I've got two things kind of pop into my head. There's a saying I use, and it is a bit bypassy, but it is said with all humility and kind of, it's a very true statement for me, and it's that I have 7 pieces of a 1 billion piece puzzle, and I don't know what the picture's supposed to look like. And for my kind of logical, sciencey brain, that allows it to step off the gas so much.
Yeah.
Of trying to understand everything.
Yeah.
And the other thing is probably a little more practical, is if you feel drawn, it's like to what you were talking about earlier, it's like live your truth in that space. So I have been, so I imagine other people have been. I have been, guilty's the wrong word, but I have definitely not been aware of how my contributions are interacting with things that are supporting behaviors like that. And so we all only have so much power, but we have way more power than we realize. So I didn't realize, for example, a while ago, I was with a bank and learned that it was supporting a civil war. They were sending weaponry, paying for loans for an oppressive government. And I think it's impossible to be across that stuff all the time. But if you can be, at least try and call some of that stuff into your life and at least let the world know, you know, whether you're talking about consciousness, but that you want to be responsible for as much as you can be for changing the kind of uncivil parts of civilization. That's the wrong word, isn't it? It's more like the bits that don't resonate with you. You know, call that resonance into your life. Because we all have, whether it's through our super funds or whether it's through, you know, the support that we offer, protests or whatever it is, we all actually do have a say. We're lucky we live in a democracy. So I know that's it's a bit more practical and a bit less spiritual, but, you know, there's this, I feel it was so fascinating during all the COVID process, how there were protests and all of a sudden you didn't have a right to protest. And I just think it's part of the democratic process. And you have a member of parliament and you have someone that you can talk to. And when the system is functioning at its highest, you have that right. And you have an ability to change things, albeit however small. Because the thing is, if people do nothing, nothing happens. It's really, really simple. But it's easier to not ring your local MP and say, I want to come and talk to you about something I'm really passionate about. And then all of a sudden, you know, for some reason there's a collective energy and he's got 100 people talking to him about what's going on in Gaza. So now he, as a duly elected representative, has to go and talk about that. His electorate's getting pissy about what's going on, or whatever the thing is.
Issue, yeah.
So there actually is, there's mechanisms that you have power. It's just that, you know, I guess through our sedentary lifestyles and our distractions, we've been kind of lulled into this idea that the machine just trundles on without us and you just have to vote. It's like, well, democracy is really about an active participation of the participants. So yeah, I don't know if that means anything or not, but that's you have more power than you think, I think would be probably my takeaway from that.